And one of the big problems is these kind of phishing and fake emails that it used to be very easy to send an email from me to somebody else. I'm going to think you're an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, oh, well, clearly you don't care. So what I'm going to then think is the 1,000 emails you're sending to Gmail that don't exist, that stuff's using resources. It's using electricity. We don't need it. This one is probably the most powerful in terms of marketing in particular. When you kind of break those down into the personas, everything works better.
Hey everybody, we're Tillison Consulting and we love digital marketing, and you're listening to the Inside Digital podcast. This is your one-stop shop to learn and expand your knowledge within the digital marketing space. It's never been more important to have an online presence, and in this show, our experts will talk about SEO, PPC, and everything in between. They'll share their personal insights, experiences, and strategies they're taking advantage of, so the rest of us can do the same. Here's today's episode.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Inside Digital podcast. My name is Nick. I am project lead here at Tillison Consulting, and here with me, someone new to the company, I think.
We'll forego the intros. I'm Mark Tillison for anybody who hasn't listened to the show before.
Yeah, our managing director, the man in charge. Today we're going to be talking about turning emails into revenue. We've shortlisted 5 key strategies that we go with not only working on our own brands, but for the clients and partners that we work on. So I think let's just dive straight into it.
So 5 ways you can quickly, easily do better with email, get more revenue. Cool.
That anyone can do. Any size of business can really adopt these.
That sounds good.
Yeah, perfect. Excellent. The first thing we've identified, obviously, with any email, you've got your subject line. That is like your main hook. That is the main thing that people are going to see in their inbox once you've sent that. Do you want to walk us through the main things we consider in terms of like best practices and some kind of actionable tips that our viewers might be able to take away from that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's so nuanced. There's so much actually to subject lines. So I think the first thing is, if we think about the journey of an email, how does it get delivered, and how does somebody open it and do something? So you first need to get through spam filters. So subject lines, you want to avoid stuff that is going to raise some red flags in terms of spam filters on email providers. So Gmail, Yahoo, people like that, they're going to pick those things up. So if you start putting like sale in massive, big, bold letters, there's a higher probability that's not even going to get delivered. So you definitely want to think about that in your subject lines. It sounds obvious, but just make it relevant. Like if you want, no one's going to click your email and buy something if they haven't opened it. And they're not going to open it if the subject line doesn't look enticing, intriguing. So people talk about A/B testing. And I think what people miss is, well, that's great and that sounds amazing, but I'll just put 2 lines, but what should I do? So I think you want to have a bit of a strategy around that. So you definitely want to think about doing an A/B test. So most email software will allow you to send a test to maybe 20% of your audience, and then the winner, the one with the best open rate, then gets delivered to the 80%. So the main reason you're doing this is to get more people to open your email, right? Because if they don't open it, then they're not clicking. If they're not clicking, they're not buying. So that's the reason for the subject line. It's one of the steps. So what I would encourage you to think about, certainly in the first stages of email, is rather than just doing a random, this sounds better than this, I think people will open this rather than this. Actually think like more strategically. So the first 5 or 6 emails that you send, maybe you're sending every couple of weeks or something, rather than just saying, let's A/B test subject lines, actually think about what type of subject line. So you want to test something like pain versus intrigue, for example. For this audience, does pain work better than intrigue? Something like that. And then as your first 5 or 6 emails, not only, it's not like subject A works better than B, but actually what you might find is intrigue works better for your audience than pain does. In which case, for the next 5 emails, you A/B test different intrigue subject lines. And then that's going to get better and better and better. So I think that massively gets missed. most people, as I say, just kind of go, I'll put some words on there and hope for the best, and then someone else will have an idea and we'll test that idea. But there's no strategy with it. Whereas this way, you're learning about what your audience responds to in terms of open rates. So yeah, that's my kind of top tip with subject lines. Anything to add?
No, I mean, I think what I was going to ask is is there any kind of common pitfall when it comes to the kind of language you use? Do businesses, in your opinion, fall into a habit of baiting the click too much, with clickbait tactics? Do you find that to be a problem, or?
You can do that. I mean, we had a problem with this. We went a little bit too far with an email, and the open rate was amazing, but we did get a few complaints, and it was around reviews, and we apologise unreservedly. It was a good point we were making. I think maybe we pushed a little bit hard on the open bait, let's call it that. So kind of unintentionally, some people felt that they had a poor review, but it was very clear in the email when you opened it. What we were talking about was how to kind of manage those, how to deal with those. But yeah, a couple of people kind of thought they had a poor review, didn't read the email properly. So yeah, just be a bit careful, I think. With that, you can go a little bit too far and annoy people. So I think you do need to, just take care with that. The other thing I would say, and this is more general, not specific with the subject, is that consistency of what your audience is expecting from you and what you're delivering. So if you are doing that kind of open baity stuff, but not delivering, that's not going to last very long. People are just going to go unsubscribe, or they're just going to stop opening your emails because this kind of amazing headline just isn't delivered in the email itself. So I'd just be really careful with that. You can go too far, as we did on one occasion.
Yeah. We learned from it.
Yeah, not doing that again. We're very sorry.
Yeah. Forgive us, marketing gods.
Yes. Cool. Audience segmentation. What are your top tips? What do you do? What works? What fails?
Yeah, so I think this is a massively underrated one with an email strategy, in my opinion. I think a lot of people in many different types of businesses, I mean, we're primarily going to be talking about e-commerce here, but a lot of people kind of wrongly assume that their audience is their audience and they're always going to do the same thing. They're always going to want the same thing. And that's not necessarily true. For the larger e-commerce businesses that we've worked on, depending on your product range, you do have a very different kind of people wanting those products and are motivated by different things. So, of course, understanding your audience truly is one thing, which we'll talk about kind of near the end of the podcast, but you really do need to segment that. The most practical way you can do that is if you use a mail system to kind of manage that anyway. If you haven't tried out Klaviyo, still don't know the best way to pronounce that.
The K one.
The one that starts with K, we'll nickname it that. If you haven't already tried out Klaviyo, or if you use MailChimp, they will have tools built in to assist you with this better. But the best way to do this is to kind of group your audience in ways that aligns with their buying behavior. So, for instance, you may want to create a list of people that have bought a type of product, which is drastically different to another. So then you can kind of align your messaging to those different groups of people. We found that to be really successful in a number of projects, in particular. But I think that's a really good starting point, because it also, by segmenting, it kind of makes the process of retargeting so much more easier. And you already know that the people have bought a particular product once in that list. They're quite likely to buy again if you just go about reaching them in a smart way again with an email. So segmenting it, absolutely, a really, really important part of that.
So that supports a bit of what we were saying with subject lines already.
Yeah.
So you're now creating a subject line with an A/B test, but you now got a target audience persona that's very different.
Yeah.
So actually, if you have a store that sells furniture, for example, you might have part of that audience might be people a segment that have bought outdoor furniture. But then there's another segment that have bought indoor furniture, and maybe people who have bought dining tables and chairs, and then you've got separate people that have bought maybe, sofa or whatever, things like that. or maybe it's a sideboard. So there's things, or maybe people who have bought certain ranges. So there's maybe different collections or brands that you sell, and people have bought that brand rather than this brand. So it means that you can decide, rather than just saying, okay, I've got 10,000 people on my email list, I'm just going to say, we've got a sale on, hey. And you might want to do that from time to time, of course, but wouldn't it be better if you were able to say, well, we've got this audience who bought this brand and this brand and this brand, and they're premium brands, but then we have some cheaper brands. So the language you're going to use with people who have bought premium brands and the subject line you are going to use an A/B test might be different from the people that have bought the kind of the budget brand, for example. Because the things that motivate those people are different, and therefore the subject line is different, and the email content is different, and your success rate in terms of people who have purchased will be different. If you just say, we have a sale on, here's everything, you're making it like really hard for them. Whereas if we say, well, we know that actually you're driven by price and you buy our budget stuff, wouldn't you be better sending the budget audience an email that focuses on the budget brand because they're more likely to buy them, and maybe put a little bit about premium, and then the premium audience, you want to send them an email with the premium brands in because they are more likely to buy that. They've already shown that by their behavior. So I think when you divide them up, it means you can have a much more specific conversation, and the content is more relevant to them. And when the content is more relevant and the subject is more relevant, the open rate is greater, the click rate is greater, and we get more sales, which is the whole point of the game here, right? So I think the segmentation is kind of huge. You can get, I think, more detailed within that if you want to, in terms of adding additional attributes and being able to kind of, I want to send an email to an audience that has bought this specific product or this specific brand and range. So, going back to my analogy, people who have bought, I don't know, a dining room table and chairs, they're not going to buy that again anytime soon. That's going to last a long time. So why would we send them an email about, hey, we've got an offer on our dining room table and chairs? I've just bought one like 6 months ago. Why would I buy another one? That doesn't make any sense at all doing that. So you could exclude those people and send it to everybody. So you're kind of going, I want to send an email to anybody who has not bought a dining room set from us in the last 2 years. That would be relatively easy to do, but you've got to have that in your data as well. But yeah, it unlocks so many things when you start segmenting the audiences in that way, even down to, you've got your kind of customers that have ordered from you multiple times in the last X period, things like that you want to target and do special offers with and things like that, or people that have spent the most money, frequent purchasers, people that have not bought for a year or more. What are they doing? How do we re-engage those people? So if you segment them, you can have much more specific targeted email and have much greater success. It's a lot more effort, but I think the rewards are more than worth it.
Exactly, because as well, what you really don't ever want to do is, ultimately marketing, you don't really want to give people any kind of communication that they don't want as well. So by not segmenting, you kind of run the risk, using your kind of table analogy, of just constantly giving your audience stuff that they're not going to engage with, which naturally kind of segues into our next point about deliverability. So say if over time so many people are just unsubscribing, or you're getting really bad open rates or stuff like that, that is going to have a direct impact on deliverability. So shock horror, our next tip is actually about deliverability. Making sure your emails actually deliver to no one's surprise is hugely, hugely important. It is a bit nuanced. There are some technicalities to that. So I'm going to hand over to you on this one.
So this part is, you're going to need a techie to help you with this stuff. And there are some really neat tools that you will find online. There's a couple I've used where it will basically do a test for you. So it says, here's an email address. You send it an email from your MailChimp or whatever you're going to use. And then it will reply to you and send you an email saying, actually, you've got these failures. So we'll maybe put that in the comments and put some links into those. That would be useful. What happens, obviously, we're all aware of the enormous amount of spam. And I always think of, I forget that actually I'm probably protected from 95% of it. So what's actually getting through is only a very small percentage of really what there is. Now, the reason that exists is that it's very cheap to send email. So spammers use it. And of course, what's happened as a result of that is the email providers, like Microsoft Outlook and Gmail and people like that, obviously have these controls in place to stop spam getting through. And one of the big problems is these kind of phishing and fake emails that it used to be very easy to send an email from me to somebody else. And it looked like it came from me, use my email address. Whereas now there's lots of protection in place to stop that kind of fraudulent activity, those phishing attacks. The downside for that as a marketer is now we have to jump through a load of hoops just to kind of prove to those people that we're not spammers, that we're not kind of faking this. So there's a whole bunch of policies around SPF records, around DMARC. There's a number of different protocols. DMARC's a more recent one. And if you haven't implemented these functions on your server, so some records that go on your domain host, for example, things like that. So that's why you're going to need a techie. Then when you're sending your emails from MailChimp, Klaviyo, whatever, what happens is the receiving server says, is the person who's sending that actually the person that's sending that, or is this being faked? And how they're validating that is using SPF, DMARC, and a whole bunch of other protocols. So it depends how you are, or what platform you're using to send it, but also who is receiving it, what validation method they are using, what verification method. So basically you have to do them all. Why do this? Well, again, if you've got 10,000 people in your email list and you haven't done some of this stuff, you might find that 20% of your emails are not getting delivered because of your DMARC policy. Well, that means 20% less revenue, doesn't it? Immediately, because your emails just literally aren't getting delivered. They're not getting blocked as spam. The person isn't seeing your subject line, and they're then not opening it. They haven't even seen it. It's not being delivered, purely because of these technical issues. So I would definitely encourage you to go search Google and kind of go, how do I do DMARC? Go and find one of those tools. And there are a bunch of them, and they're really neat. They work really well. Most of them are free. They have some paid versions as well, of course. But I would definitely do some tests on there and then talk to your IT and or marketing agency, whoever looks after your domain registration and the DNS settings and all that kind of stuff, and get those done. And then you are going to deliver more email, which means even if your open rate is the same, more people are going to open it and more people are going to click and more people are going to buy, which means your lifetime customer value is going to increase over a period of time. So it is a bit of a techie one, but definitely worth doing. You could see an immediate boost in revenue from email campaigns just by fixing those problems. There is a slight downside to that, though, that I'm always aware of, which is if you've had an email list for a number of years and you haven't put these policies in place, there's going to be a big chunk of your audience that maybe have been on your list for 3 or 4 years or more that haven't heard from you. You've been emailing them thinking, oh, they're on our list, they're getting our email. They haven't been. So when you fix this, they're suddenly getting an email from a company they don't remember doing anything with that's going to feel like spam. So you've got to be really careful with that. Just be aware that that's going to happen. It's a bit like moving from one email provider to another. That happens there as well. Oh, well, we're using this thing and it was fine, it was great. We've moved to MailChimp. The deliverability on MailChimp is so much higher because of various reasons. But suddenly you get loads of people going, oh, this is spam, this is spam, this is spam, because they haven't heard from you for 4 years. So you want to think about maybe cleansing that list at the same time. And actually people that haven't opened our email for 3 years, let's not include them. Or let's include them in a different audience. Hey, an audience segment, look at that. So an audience segment of these people that haven't opened for ages, move them over, don't include them in your mailing list, and then send them a separate email maybe to kind of reinvigorate, to kind of restart that relationship. Like they're a complete stranger. And then if they unsubscribe from that, it's okay. It's in a separate list. It's a separate email that's very specific to, it speaks to the fact that they haven't ordered. They haven't opened anything, so you are having a different conversation with those people. So I would segment before you do all this stuff, and then treat those people differently. Have some different messaging, different subject lines, different content, to kind of re-onboard them, if you like. Cool.
Excellent.
Okay, which brings me on to, helpfully, it was almost like we planned this.
This is it.
Which brings me on to list cleaning. So do you want to walk us through what do we do to clean a list?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And like you've touched on, the extent you need to go to clean your list and kind of warm it back up, so to speak, will really vary on how engaged you've been in email to begin with, really. You know, if you've been engaging your mailing list from kind of like, I don't know, service reminders if you're in that kind of industry, or like some kind of product offers and discounts over time if you're an e-commerce store, you may have an easier time in picking that back up where you left off. But let's say if you haven't really done any substantial email marketing activity at all, you are going to have to work quite hard. I think the first point of call is there are a number of free online tools that you can use where you can kind of just dump your contact list or mailing list in that, and then they will check if those are inactive or active emails off the bat, which is
Does
really
this
helpful.
account exist?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Why is it on the list? Then just delete it.
Exactly.
Get rid of it.
It will immediately flag the stuff that is just junk at that point. Because if you go ahead and send like an initial warm-up email to a bunch of inactive email addresses, that's likely going to kind of harm your I don't really know the official sort of term for this, but like your credibility and how
reputation.
Exactly. Yeah. How reputable you're considered by those email service providers. And then kind of when you've done that, like I said, a general warm-up email is not a bad idea. So if you're, this varies of what industry you're in, but you can kind of naturally tie it into what's going on in the year and use that as a way to just email everyone without segmenting if you've not got to that point yet. So let's say, I don't know what time of year we're in. We're nearing Valentine's Day. You might want to send out a Valentine's offer. Okay, that might be a bad example because not most businesses won't really need to do anything Valentine's Day.
Maybe it's good if you're a restaurant where you sell greetings cards or chocolates or flowers,
but not if you're a wholesaler who sells cement. I don't really think you can find a Valentine's.
I can find a Valentine's pun in there, no problem at all.
We won't do that on this podcast. Not that kind of podcast. But you can find a generic way to kind of gently sort of reintroduce yourself to that cold email list, as if to say, hey, we know it's this coming up. How about 10% off your order or stuff like that? You know, little ways like that. But then over time, you do need to get in the habit of making sure that list is clean, making sure that the contact details within that list and who you're sending to are correct and up to date. Because over time, like we said, it is going to harm your reputation score. Now, like I touched on before, tools like Klaviyo, the one that starts with K, which we're going to coin as a term, or MailChimp, they do a good job at prompting you to do that nowadays. They'll say it's been X amount of time since this list got some attention. You should consider doing X, Y, and Z, which is really helpful if you're totally new to that kind of thing. But it's something that you do need to keep on top of over time.
Yeah, the way I like to think of it is if you kind of spin this round, so we're the e-commerce store, we're sending email and we want to sell stuff, right? So that's our part of this relationship. We've then got a recipient who has been a customer, they've bought from us in the past. Let's hope, I'm going to assume anybody's buying a list of email addresses. I'm just going to assume we don't have those. So we've got that, but there's a third party involved here, which is the email provider, right? And I'm not talking MailChimp, I'm talking Gmail, Yahoo, right? So what are the costs they are incurring, like all this server space and everything else, right? And they've got racks and they've got people looking after this stuff. And the higher the volume of email that's delivered, the higher those costs go up, right? So every time an email is sent to a Gmail address that doesn't exist, their server has to process that and send it back. There is a cost. It might be a tiny amount. But if you imagine how many millions of times a day that happens, that's a considerable amount of money, right? Multiply that by 365. I don't even want to think about how many zeros are on the end of that number.
Disgusting amount of zeros.
Yeah, huge number, right? So, and let's not get into the whole eco stuff. That stuff's using resources. It's using electricity. We don't need it, right? How much is spam email and bounced emails and all that? What does that actually cost the planet? And what does it cost the global economy? So what we have to do is stop that. Now, if I'm Gmail, and you, as the e-commerce store, have sent emails to Gmail recipient email addresses that don't exist, and you've sent 1,000 of those every week, and my server keeps going, doesn't exist, doesn't exist, doesn't exist, what am I going to do?
You've got to stop like most of those moving forwards from being delivered in the first place.
I'm going to think you're an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, oh, well, clearly you don't care. So what I'm going to then think is the 1,000 emails you're sending to Gmail that don't exist for your 100,000 people in your email list, I'm going to go, well, there's a big chunk of your data. You're wasting my time. You're not behaving in a way that actually benefits your customers or me as Gmail, and you don't care. So you're not playing nice. So what am I going to do? I'm going to think, well, that's a bit dodgy. What am I going to do with the rest of your emails? I'm going to be less likely to deliver them, right? So your delivery rate is going to go down because your reputation with Gmail is a bit worse because you're sending all these all these emails all the time and wasting my server time, right? So I'm probably going to penalize you for that, right? So, and then you've got the people reporting it spam, all that kind of stuff. That's going to come into that reputation as well. So the point of cleaning the list is essentially it benefits you because guess what happens? Your open rate is going to go up. Your open rate is 0 from a bounced email, right? And somebody who's literally, it's all just going in their spam folder all the time, they're never seeing those emails, it's also 0%. So you're going to increase your open rate by getting rid of the people who never get the emails delivered or never open them anyway, by just removing them. And I know that's tough because you look at the email list, you go, yes, we've got 10,000 people on our email list. I know we need to delete 1,000. I like having 10,000, it feels good. No, but they're not. It's not 10,000. It's 9,000. Or actually, it's 6,000 people who are really engaged. What are the 4,000 doing that you're going to delete? What are you actually going to lose by deleting them? Oh, but they might click just once. They might buy something. They're not going to. Just get rid of them.
Let go.
Move them. Yeah, just let it go. Like the unsubscribers obviously unsubscribe, and that's fine. But the people who are not opening your email, just move them to another segment. Right, segment them off somewhere else. Do a warm up email. Do something with them, but just let it go. Or do a warm up email. Try the last thing. Give them a 50% discount or whatever. If they don't respond to that, just get rid. They're not listening to you, and that's harming the reputation for the other 6,000 people who maybe don't get them delivered as well as they might because you've got all this junk mixed in with it. So that's the kind of email hygiene, if you want to call it that. Yeah. But that's going to give you a much better reputation with someone like Gmail, who you are asking without payment to deliver your email to their customer. Same with Yahoo, same with Microsoft Outlook, and all the other platforms people use. So that is why you want to keep that list much better. You have a much better chance of delivering email to the people that might respond if you are not sending it to people who definitely will not. Yeah, and of course, there's the small bonus of you normally paying in tiers for your email provider. So if you've got 20,000 people on there and 10,000 are not listening, you're paying to send those emails to nobody. So it's literally costing you money. So that's a bit nuts. So yeah, list cleaning, I think, massively, massively important. Yeah. So how often are we doing that? Is that a monthly kind of thing or every couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, for smaller clients or smaller websites, you could probably get away with doing that sort of tri-monthly, once a quarter if you really wanted. But if you're a big e-commerce business that's really looking to scale that up, monthly, if not bi-weekly, I think. The more you're willing to do and the more you can spend time on it without overdoing it, it never hurts.
So you might really clean the bounces really regularly because they're obvious, right? But maybe these people haven't opened for ages. Maybe that's a quarterly thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Seems fair. Good tips.
Yeah, and your sort of an email tool you might use, like Klaviyo, for instance, they will start to flag those individual contacts over time that aren't really are inactive, and aren't really engaging with you, and they may sort of flag those for removal, which is really helpful for you to kind of reduce the time taken to closely identify those. So
great.
We'll move on to our final point. This kind of blends into the segmenting your audience, blends into exactly how you create a really good subject line. It's the all-encompassing thing that you should always be doing and being aware of in all marketing, really, I'd say. And that is actually targeting your persona. I mean, obviously, you've got to first really understand what your persona is. Your audience is not just who wants to buy your product. That doesn't exist. Stop saying that.
Yeah. Oh, it's anyone.
It's anyone. I want to target everyone. No, you don't. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So do you want to walk through sort of how exactly you target your persona? And if you feel it's relevant, discuss like how you should really identify your persona anyway?
Yeah, so as Nick said, the persona piece in terms of understanding who that is, and you might have multiple as an e-commerce store. Like we took the furniture idea, for example, where you've got people who are buying budget, people who are buying premium. They might be slightly different personas, and that's perfectly okay. But I really like to end up with almost like a picture in my head of maybe not an actual person, but a representation of that audience. So I like to have a name. I like to imagine who that person is, so that when I'm sending that email or writing that ad or thinking about should I advertise on Facebook or should I advertise on YouTube, I'm like, is Doris, like, is that my persona? Is Doris on YouTube? Would Doris like this subject line? Like, would Doris buy this product or that product, right? And I'm talking to Doris, like she's a made up person.
Hey, Doris.
Yeah. Hey, Doris, do you want to buy some stuff, Doris? Right. So, but yeah, so the process I like to go through with that, that we do with all of our projects is really just talking to a business owner or whoever we're working with and saying, okay, well, look, what age do you think they are? What kind of age range? Do they have children? Don't they have children? What's their level of education? What is the problem that they have that means they need to buy this product or this service? Is this something that's a luxury item that's a choice to buy this? Or is this something that is causing them like pain? Like, and I don't mean physical pain necessarily, it might be, but it might be, I've got this problem, I need to solve it. So I don't know, it might be, a more desire product might be, oh, well, I really want to get myself a new dress. Great. Okay. Well, that's a desire product. How are you going to create subject lines for that? What content in your email, things like that? It can be very different from, oh, I've been locked out of my house, I need a locksmith. Right? That's a very different, I mean, it might literally, both of those people could be Doris. But the things that motivate them in that situation at that point in time are very, very different. So, down to subject lines, content, how you're going to segment your audiences from the data, all the things we've talked about. Actually, this one is probably the most powerful in terms of marketing in particular. Marketing starts with market. Our market is Doris, so it makes sense. We start with the market and we build everything around that. So when you are creating that subject line, you should be thinking, I'm sending an email to Doris. How old is Doris? Has Doris had children? Is Doris busy? Does Doris work? What is Doris's level of education? What phone is she most likely to be using? Or is she more likely to be using a tablet? Is she more likely to be using a desktop? Is she buying this? Is this a work thing? Is it B2B? Is it B2C? Is this solving an immediate problem that's an urgent thing, or is this a nice to have? All of those things, if you understand that and you have that very clearly, and we like to have those kind of stored and referenced in kind of everything we do. So you always go, oh, let's write a blog post, or we're writing it to Doris. Who's Doris again? And we've got our list, right? So then the language in your blog post, how long it is, how long the sentences are, do you use big words or short words? What's Doris's level of understanding? Yeah. All of that flows from that persona, as should the email. So that's why you do the persona piece. And then, as I said, that feeds into your segmentation. So it's tempting quite often to say, oh, people that bought product X, let's put those in a list. But actually, if you could identify, and particularly in B2B, for example, let's say you sold IT hardware, like IT stuff. So you sell mice and keyboards, and you sell laptops, and you sell tablets, and you sell screens and cables and things like that. Would you segment your audience and go, well, let's target everybody who's bought a HDMI cable? But that could be, to your point, that could be anybody.
It could. Yeah.
Right? So you might send an email saying, oh, well, everyone who's bought a HDMI cable more than 6 months ago, we're doing a deal on HDMI cables, we're going to send an email about HDMI. That's fine. But actually, if you segment according to the situation those people are in, people are going to buy HDMI cables because they need one for their PC they've got at home, or they've got their laptop and they bought a HDMI cable so they can plug it into a screen or whatever. But you also got people who are buying that because they have an office with a bunch of people sitting in it and they need HDMI cables for that. So if you can identify that, it means you could create emails to, I don't know, Steve, who is the IT guy that works in a business. But Steve is buying for a business. So the email you're going to send to him is very different because you're not going to talk about plugging into a TV because he's at work. They don't have a TV. Well, they might, but do you know what I mean? You're going to be talking about laptops and things like and things for work that could also be used at home. But you're not going, oh, you could use it at home, you could use it at work. It doesn't matter, Steve. He's at work. He's a B2B customer. Whereas Doris might have bought a HDMI cable, but you don't want to talk to her about work stuff because she's a 65-year-old lady she sits on a sofa watching Coronation Street and looking at a tablet. They're very different audiences. So when you kind of break those down into the personas, everything works better. Your subject lines you'll be crafting for those people. The open rates will be better because they're relevant to Steve or relevant to Doris or whoever you decide is your avatar, is your persona. So I would always start with that because what's my subject line going to be? Well, here are 1,000 opportunities. Whereas if you go, what's my subject line for Steve, who is this, and this? Actually, we've probably more like got 100 or maybe 50 or 30. So that's quicker. It's going to save me a heap of time because I know who I'm writing for. What should we send the email? What should we put in the email? Well, there's 100 things we could do. Not for Steve, there's only 20. Quicker decision, right? We've qualified out a ton of that stuff immediately because it's not relevant to our audience. It doesn't help Steve, or this doesn't help Doris. Don't send it to Doris then. It helps Steve, send it to Steve, right? That's the point of segmenting it so that the emails are much more relevant. Your subject lines are going to be more relevant. Your open rate is going to be better. The products that are in the email are more relevant, which means they're more likely to be clicked and they're more likely to buy. Which is, again, the most important thing here. Everything else is a step towards the sale. So if we can optimize delivery through improving DMARC and deliverability and list cleaning, then we deliver more emails. If we deliver more emails and we do a better job on our subject line, then more people are going to open it. So we get 10% more emails delivered, we get 10% more opens, and we get 10% more clicks by optimizing our content. The compound of that is probably, the math's probably about 36-37% increase in revenue. That's huge. Yeah. That's enormous by doing those three things. That's absolutely enormous.
Yeah. And anyone can do them. That's the thing. You don't have to have a huge business and be investing hundreds of thousands in marketing in a year. You can pick this up and move this on your own.
Yeah.
It's really powerful stuff to just embrace and move with it.
Yeah.
And I think just building on what you said about the persona stuff, you're putting that into practice. Once you've really identified who that persona is, every time you're kind of putting anything out there, if it's email or more, we won't talk about those because it's about email, but force yourself to ask the question, would Doris actually care about this?
Yeah.
It keeps you on brand, it keeps you specific, and over time, you're just going to be creating stuff that's far more higher in quality as well, just by doing that.
Yeah.
So,
should we go and send some email?
let's do it.
Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you have questions, ask in the comments and we'll do our best for you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Inside Digital Podcast. Make sure to visit our website at tillison.co.uk, where you can read more about the topics discussed in this show and much more. If you're looking to get started or to continue your digital marketing journey, we can help. Just reach out to one of our experts through our website. We'd love to hear if you found value in this show. Please leave a review and be sure to tune in for our next episode.